Based on the best-selling novel, Daniel Bruhl, Luke Evans, and Dakota Fanning.
What compels a man to do evil?
The Alienist, new limited series Mondays at 9, 8 central on TNT.
And we're back.
Yeah.
And let's get into those theories.
Yeah.
So the first theory is suicide. The theory is that, and some people say that the only way that the chloroform could have got down through his mouth and his throat into his stomach fast enough and not cause any visible burns was if someone were to have willingly and quickly drank it.
Yeah, mix it up with some brandy or something and just chug it right down.
Yeah, and the problem is that, you know, this is 1886 at this point, so other than a visual inspection of his throat, you know, today they could take a microscope and they could probably do some analysis to figure that stuff out, like how long did it take to actually swallow it all, but today we don't, or at that time they didn't have that ability, so we can't do like a fine examination of it. I mean, as we talked about before, he is supposedly, he had been in ill health, and he had been told that he only had 1 year to live. And there's the fact that he had in his will for a long time that everything went to his wife, with stipulation, which was common in that time, that she didn't remarry. Mm-hmm. Strangely, he changed his will about 3 months prior to that at the encouragement of George Dyson. So people say, well, that's an oddball about that. And we talked about this before, is that it may have been that he wanted them, as Joe had pointed out before, to hook up and become a couple. And if he were just to remove himself from the picture, that would be the most expedient way to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does make sense. It does appear, I mean, it's been said by various people that he thought Dyson would be the ideal husband for her after his death.
The other thing to keep in mind is people say, well, I mean, drinking chloroform apparently tastes really hideous.
Yeah.
And there's that whole thing about, remember the brandy? There's that glass of brandy there's a bottle of brandy in the room and a glass with brandy in it. So people say, well, maybe he poured it into the brandy to cut the flavor, and that helped prevent it from causing burns. I mean, the hard part about chloroform is that, and this applies to all of our theories, is there isn't a whole lot of data about how quickly it will kill someone. So I don't know if he was intending to take his own life. Would he have known if he had enough and how long it would take?
It doesn't take much, my understanding. Chloroform apparently in fairly small doses can stop your heart.
Well, see, that's the thing, though. I saw stuff where a guy had about like a quarter of an ounce and had died, and there was a guy who had 4 ounces of the stuff and had lived. So it's all over the map. Now, the other problem with that, of course, is that it's the era that it happens. You know, in a modern age, if somebody drinks that, they're able to pump your stomach and give you all kinds of medication, help revive you.
Also,
50, 70 years ago, that wasn't available.
Yeah, if you drank 4 ounces and then immediately threw it all up, you might live too.
Right.
Maybe, I don't know.
So, but that's the problem with the accounts of, you know, when I see these numbers and don't know how much it's going to take. But that's all I have on that. I mean, I don't know about that theory. But
it's entirely possible. I mean, it sounds like he was fairly miserable. His health was pretty bad.
He had no teeth.
Yeah.
He was gumming everything.
Yeah. Well,
in the worst sort of way.
Stubbing everything.
Yeah, stubbing everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Well, let's move on to
this story really does make me want to go see my dentist.
You
Me
should.
too.
Yeah.
Frequently and often.
We do have dental insurance through the podcast, right?
Not yet.
Well,
Soon.
actually, same kind of guy that Edwin had, probably.
Okay.
That's what we can afford.
Fair enough.
That's what I got us the cheapest plan possible.
Okay.
So let's move to the next theory, which is that his wife Adelaide was the one who did it.
That's a popular theory.
Well, popular with a lot of people, including, as we said before, Edwin's father. Now, the reason why to do that, in a way, seems easy because she'd been married to him for 14 years and she was tired of him, and she had this new boyfriend that she would rather be with. And supposedly, as we've kind of talked about before, there's the fact that apparently they didn't have a sexual relationship, whereas she did with Dyson.
Although other accounts have said that he actually did want to have sex with her, but she didn't want to because, for one reason, because of all the stuff that was Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's one of the reasons. So we'll talk about this now. Is the chloroform? Where did the chloroform come from? Well, Adelaide had Dyson procure it for her. And what happened at the time is the requirements were that you had, if you were going to get any more than, I believe, 1 ounce at a time, because it's a toxic substance, you had to sign the book saying you got 2 or 5 ounces or whatever the heck amount it was. So he went through to 4 different locations over the course of 2 days and procured it in 1 ounce quantities, and then poured it all into one bottle and gave her that big bottle. And then according to some people, what she said was that she wasn't going to use it to help her husband sleep, but instead, when he came at her in a quote-unquote lustful way, she was going to put it on a handkerchief and wave it in his face until he passed out, and thereby sparing herself from having to endure his breath. Which I've known some people who had some pretty bad breath, so I kind of understand that.
I kind of do too, but like maybe just turn your head or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the problem with that all is that this whole they almost never had intercourse thing is that she appears to have occasionally slept with him because condoms were found in Edwin's belongings, which would indicate that he was having sex with someone.
Used condoms?
New condoms.
Yeah.
So presumably he had been using condoms, and therefore it had been together. And the whole thing about, like, you remember we talked about when she got pregnant? She had made a statement to somebody at one point that the one time they didn't use protection, she got pregnant. So that indicates that they might have actually had a sexual relationship.
Sounds like, I think that would be a little more believable.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, or he was hopeful, he was thinking,
There is
okay,
the well of eternal hope for marriage.
or, I mean, even in terms of, like, he had been having these, like, really bad health problems, and so probably while that was going on, they weren't really being physical with each other.
But then when his health rallies...
Yeah, he thought, oh, yeah, this is going to be my chance, and maybe he went to go have some sort of, breath freshening procedure done or something like that at the dentist, and he was like, this is how we're going to ring in the new year. It's going to be amazing. I'm in such good health, and we're just turning a new leaf. Everything's great, and that's why he had new condoms.
Maybe.
Yeah, all set, but
I don't know.
Didn't normally happen. Well,
My problem here, though, is why would she kill him? I mean, if you think about it, she's got a boyfriend on the side. It appears to have been given the blessing. She's with a man who can provide for her in a manner that she has been accustomed to. So it doesn't make sense to me. But then again, there's also like, okay, well, why did Dyson go around and get the chloroform in such a sneaky fashion if everything was going to be on board and none of it was pre-planned?
I don't know. Here's one thing I will say is in Portland, Oregon, proper, you have to buy spray paint.
you got to show your ID.
You gotta show your ID, and they'll write your name in the log. Or you can drive like 15 minutes up into Vancouver, or even like just a little bit outside of Portland and not have to do that.
Great job telling all the taggers where to go.
Well, but honestly, I don't use spray paint
Go
to
to
tag
Skippy
things.
Spray Paint Emporium.
Well, I don't. I mean, I don't, right? I use it for totally legal, totally normal, creative reasons. But I would way rather drive the extra 10 minutes or whatever it is to not have to deal with the whole process of the ID and like blah blah blah.
It's not quite that inconvenient as long as there's somebody there to actually open the cabinet and get it to you. But
that's
he would have only had to have gone through it once. Instead, he went all over town. He went to 4 different vendors. That's
to not
the
have
weird
to deal
part.
with it.
Yeah.
That's a lot of commuting back in the day.
No, I agree. I'm sorry. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I think that was super
was
weird
hokey
and
or
suspicious.
hinky.
Why did he do that?
I think he actually went to 3. I can't remember now.
No, he said he went to 4 different locations.
Yeah, I
he
thought it was that you couldn't. It wasn't just that they got you to sign something. Without a prescription, you couldn't get more than an ounce or 2.
But here's the weird thing: is she had procured a prescription for her husband. So it again seems like they should have been able to get it.
Well, now actually, what he said in his testimony to the court is that when she asked him to do it, he said, "Well, why doesn't your doctor give it to you?" And she said, "Well, actually, it's Annie, our nurse, who is away on vacation now. She usually gets it." And so since she's gone, I need to get chloroform from somewhere else. So can you get some for me? And so that's what he did. And
Yeah.
But that's what he said anyway. That's what he said in court that he said to her. Like, well, why not the doctor?
I was gonna say, even if she did have a prescription, if she wasn't going herself, or the person who the prescription was written for, Edwin, sorry, wasn't going himself. I don't know if pharmacists will fill it for just anyone. You know what I mean? If
I
you
don't
have
know
the
what the rules
prescription,
were in London.
I don't
think
either.
they would have been a little looser back in those days.
Yeah.
But back to your thing about why would she kill him, though, I can think of one good reason. He's been in bad health for a long time. She's been nursing him for a long time.
And she's tired of doing it.
She's tired of it. She wants a life. She's still fairly young.
Alternately,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, she's still fairly young. She's thinking, if he dies sooner rather than later, maybe I could still have some semblance of a life, for a little while.
I was just thinking, going back again to his health getting better. Maybe he said, oh yeah, my health is getting better now. I don't have all these limitations. We can resume our physical relationship. We can, become husband and wife again. You can stop your side thing, your side hustle with this other guy. That's fine. Here we go. We're gonna do our thing, and we're gonna be a married couple. And she was like, oh no, that's not what I wanted at all.
Yeah, maybe she was actually liking the George Dyson better, and maybe also she's been poisoning him the entire time. Just at a low level and keeping him sick.
Possible.
Yeah.
And
That's entirely possible. Now, how did she go about doing it? So that's part of this theory is, okay, well, how did she do it? Because obviously when he was asleep, she didn't just, or if she had knocked him out with chloroform, she didn't then just pour it down his gullet, because that would have taken too long to go down his throat, and it would have caused the burns. There's the whole brandy thing. So there's that glass of brandy. So maybe she lied when she said she woke up and used the brandy to try to revive him. And instead, she, as the theory goes, put the chloroform in his brandy, said, hey, it's New Year's, sweetie. Let's have a toast. And he tosses it back, unknowingly ingesting the poison that's going to kill him.
could have been.
This is a really dumb question.
Okay.
But I keep wondering this about this case is it had to have been ingestion, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I wondered too if it was like some
a needle or something.
I wondered that too. I would assume that because there was an autopsy, I would assume they would look for needle marks.
I would assume that too, but
I can think of two other ways you can get into the stomach, though. One is through intubation, just run it down the nose. If you knocked him out, you could run a tube down his throat and pour it in that way. Although, then again, I'm not so sure that she was that well informed about the effects of chloroform.
Right.
Yeah.
That she would have known.
That she would have known to hide it.
That it would have done. Another possibility is that he had eaten a meal not too long before his death. It's possible you could have put it in the food itself and not in some sort of sealed form, like a capsule or something, like cut inside a cut of steak, you know.
But that would be really hard for him to chew and swallow.
He's not chewing very well.
So
he can't really chew.
Yeah, he might, but I would think that he would observe that in his food unless he was on a truly liquid diet, you know, like mashed potatoes and soup. The problem with chloroform, though, is that it evaporates so fast that if you pour it into his soup and he's eating
well, if it were
soup,
like in a capsule,
that's what I'm talking.
something.
Yeah, I'm talking about encapsulated form, so he can't taste it, can't smell it.
And I don't
just
remember
breaks
anything
open
about them finding anything like that in his stomach. At least not noted in the recordings. So.
Yeah, you would think they would have noted that, but there could have been some natural form of something. You know, maybe she broke open a walnut, filled it with chloroform, and then super glued it back together. You know, and then fed that to him.
And they were, and in the autopsy, they weren't like, oh, it's weird. There's an entire walnut shell in his stomach.
No, you know, this is the 19th century. Yeah, walnut, of course.
Okay.
I don't know,
Obviously.
but obviously, and I don't seriously, literally mean a walnut.
I
But
know.
something
I know what you
natural.
meant.
But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, she could have just poisoned him in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah. So let's move to our third theory, our third culprit, which is the Reverend George Dyson. Now, the hardest part about this story is that, as we talked about earlier, Dyson says he went to all these places and got the chloroform. And then when everything was said and done and the cops were on to him, quote unquote, it seemed like the cops were on to him, he was walking on a path and he chucked the bottles on the side of a path, so he got rid of that evidence, which, you know, I would imagine if he truly had gotten it from different places, they might be able to ID that. I don't know, mass spectrometer or whatever they would use, but of course they don't have that available. She also, though, she threw away the bottle that she had her chloroform in, the 4 ounces that he had given her. I think she chucked it in a railway trash can, if I remember right. So they're both seen guilty here, and they're both throwing evidence away.
Yeah, and especially she looked the guiltiest of the two, if you could believe his testimony anyway, because apparently she said one of the reasons he asked her, well, why does he need chloroform? And she was like, well, he's got this internal problem that it gives him paroxysm or something, and chloroform is for that. And then after, then you get to the chloroform, and then he dies, and then there's an autopsy, and he talked to the doctor after the autopsy about the autopsy results. And there was chloroform in his body, but also no internal problems noted at all.
Yeah.
So he confronts her and says, well, what's this all? You said you had all these big internal issues, but there's nothing shows up in the autopsy. What was that about? And then he says, by the way, the chloroform, I'm going to have to come clean. And she was like, no, you can't tell anybody about the chloroform. And
I think Edwin was a bit of a hypochondriac because
probably
he's got all these illnesses and all these issues, and yet when the doctors examine him, they can find no cause.
Yeah. It's one of those sayings. You shouldn't self-diagnose for that reason.
No.
So
No.
Like my psych teachers warned us. It's like when you start reading about all these various psychological issues, don't start because you're
self-examining.
Don't start self-diagnosing yourself as psychotic. You aren't. Okay.
No.
Well, maybe some
of you.
But
but probably not.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I can see kind of an argument of just being kind of an idiot and saying, okay, listen, the police are onto us. They know that Edwin died of chloroform poisoning, and I have chloroform. I know they're looking at me. I know I didn't do anything wrong, but it sure is going to look like I did something wrong if they find these bottles. So I'll just get rid of them, and then it won't look like I did anything wrong at all.
And from his point of view, he's been even if he was totally innocent, even the way the law looks at it, especially in the way society looks at it back in those days, women were delicate creatures. They weren't typically murderers. He was almost always the guy.
Yeah.
So
it actually almost always is the guy.
But and so even though she might have totally snared him, he just decided, maybe I'd better shut up about this stuff and get rid of the evidence. And I think that's probably what happened here.
The other thing I keep thinking of is Edwin, with the whole chucking of the bottles, he's kind of lucky that he was in London of 1885 instead of London of 2017, where everything is on CCTV.
Yeah.
So they could have actually probably seen where he was in the alley.
You don't mean Edwin, though.
No, I'm sorry. I meant George Dyson.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I totally got the wrong person.
It's okay. I was like, Edwin.
But no, Dyson, because Dyson is the one who says he chucked him when he was walking on a path. Well, today there isn't a square inch of London that doesn't.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay, well, let's move on to the last theory here. And this is not an official theory. This is just a Steve theory.
This is my favorite theory, though.
And it's the dentist.
Yeah.
The dentist is a freaking quack.
Medical misadventure, perhaps?
Yes, because this guy is such a nut job. It's entirely possible that he's probably knocking Edwin out if he's doing any kind of procedure to him that involves sawing off of teeth with live roots. So you could see him either pouring it down through what Joe said, intubation, or maybe some chloroform tablets fall. He's a klutz, and whoa, and they fall down his throat. He's like, well, he'll be okay. I won't tell him about the 72 pills that I accidentally poured down his throat.
I think they would have kicked in a little sooner than that.
I was going to say, I think chloroform only takes a few hours.
Well, I mean, it depends on how, if it was intubated, but if it was pills, like Joe said, it might give it a longer life. I really just want to disparage this dentist as much as I can.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Oh my God.
Well, it's hard to say back in those days. It's really hard to say how many people were actually killed by their doctors and their dentists. I mean, probably quite a few.
Well, and we're lucky today because we can look at these things and figure it out. But at that time, it's this is my best guess.
Yeah.
This is all I really know. I got no good hard science to back it up.
I kind of like this theory because I kind of imagine this sort of primitive gas mask sort of thing, right? With the chloroform being aerated at that, just like the smell, but it's defective because this dentist is a quack.
And it's spraying droplets.
Yeah,
in his
it's just
nostrils
like
or his mouth.
totally just like there's just like a constant drip of it down his throat. And for some reason, I don't know why it doesn't burn his throat, but, you know, he's...
Problem is that at that time they didn't use the mask. It literally was, they were just taking a rag. It was like people were actually dying at the dentist because there was no actual, time scientifically figured out how long it should be there. So they would give the same amount to you, Devin, at your size as they would to Joe, who is a much larger person compared to you.
I was going to say, and that would just kill Joe immediately.
Probably would.
I think it actually might be the other way around. But you could be right, because my science is 1885-ish. Doctors were killing people all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I mean, with anesthesia these days, they very, very carefully measure all that stuff out.
They only do it if they absolutely think they have to. I mean, I've been to several medical procedures. They're like, we don't really want to put you under. Do you want to go in? I'm like, no, I'm fine.
Really, no.
Turn on the radio so I don't have to listen to anything. It's fine.
Yeah, I've only been under once, and it was one of the most disconcerting experiences of my entire life.
Yeah.
So
See?
I don't really want it again. Yeah.
I
don't want to do it.
Only once for me too. And then when I woke up, everybody was standing around smiling. Never again.
We need to talk to you about that tattoo.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I like the dentist theory. I agree. The timeline doesn't totally line up, but of the people, I think it's just as easy to prove that he did it as anyone else.
And not even necessarily deliberately. I mean, he might have given them some pills for this, that, or whatever, and
and he seems to be the one that's giving Edwin the pills with mercury in them. Although you will see accountings written that Edwin was suffering from an STD or an STI, which like syphilis, which mercury was used to treat that. But there's absolutely no proof of that. And in his examination, they didn't find anything when they examined his body. So
that's the mercury was working.
Yeah. Yes.
But also according to Dyson, though, he did say most definitively that he had worms. And so I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah.
He was taking mercury for that. Maybe he's taking his regular dosage of mercury for the worms or whatever, and then the dentist prescribed some new pills that very day, which happened to have mercury in them. And he OD'd on mercury, but then that still doesn't explain.
That doesn't explain the chloroform. Doesn't explain the chloroform, which is why this story is so fun.
It is fun.
We're just running in circles.
I think what happened is the wife did just say, one day they're just sitting around, and she just probably said, you know what, darling, it's been so long since I've been in a chug-a-lug contest. Why don't we chug some brandy?
Yeah.
And so he just chugged it down so fast he couldn't taste the chloroform in there.
I don't think
and
that's
then, bam. Oh, well, one thing. I think I'm still thinking there is some possibility of some sort of clever introduction through the food into his stomach. That's a possibility too.
Okay. Well, you science that out and then come back to us, okay? That's your homework. But I'm not eating any meals here.
Most likely he just slugged down some brandy that had been spiked. Yeah.
Well, that's all we've got on this particular story. If you have thoughts or comments or questions about this one, you can always reach out to us by email, by sending an email to thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com. You can go to our website where you can read some of the research about this story. You can also find links to our episode history. All of that's available on the website, thinkingsidewayspodcast.com. We're on social media, so we're on Twitter. We've got a Facebook page and a Facebook group. And, of course, we're on Reddit. So we're on all the social media sites. And wherever you're listening to us, obviously you like it. We're on all the sources, but you go ahead and continue to use this one. If it does allow you to rate and review the podcast, that would be fantastic, and we do appreciate that. That's all we've got to share this week. So I guess we're going to get out of here.
Ta-ta, everybody.
Bye, guys.
The story you just heard was inspired by The Alienist, TNT's new limited series starring Daniel Bruhl, Luke Evans, and Dakota Fanning. To learn more, visit thealienist.com. That's thealienist.com. ALIENIST.
Thinking sideways. Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Hey there. Welcome to a very special episode of Thinking Sideways. Yes, it's Christmas.
Yay!
Yeah. And so we're going to bring you a Christmas mystery. I'm Joe, joined as always by
Devin.
And
Steve.
And so it's Christmas 2017. We're going to jump right into it with a mystery that was suggested by our listener, Sandy Claus. Okay, not really. I'm lying. Okay.
He's just trying to take the heat off himself.
Yeah, now, this was kind of self-suggested.
Yeah,
I guess. Yeah.
As every holiday story is, it is internally sourced.
Okay, all right. And as always, little ears warning and all that stuff. You're gonna hear graphic talk of scary things, and so yeah, if you're scared of that stuff, then don't listen.
No, we're not gonna ruin Christmas.
No,
maybe.
No. Well,
we might.
Yeah, maybe. All right, so for this year, we're going to talk about the mystery of the Bumble, also known as the Abominable Snowman.
AKA the Yeti.
Yeah, and you know about this guy from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. We've talked about that before, but the special that's been on forever. I mean, for like the last 50 years, I think.
Something like that.
Actually, more than 50 years.
53.
I think 50. Yeah, 53
Came out in
years.
64, so 53.
Yeah,
The
been a long
claymation
time.
one.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, I've been told that was not claymation. It was some sort of cloth animation thing.
Stop motion animation.
It is stop motion animation. Apparently, it wasn't clay. It was something other than some other medium. I don't know. Who cares?
Some kind of fuzzy material.
Well, we'll do an episode about that next year. What did they use for material?
The world's shortest episode.
Yeah, exactly. And the box it was all kept in has vanished. I mean, so what are they hiding? Yeah. Okay, but back to the Bumble. Okay, we each have our own theory about the Bumble. Was he real? Where did he come from? That kind of thing. We're going to talk about those. And of course, naturally, there's some disagreement here. So we're going to have to all present our sides, and then we'll hash it all out at the end, decide who's right and who's wrong.
Joe.
Yeah.
Joe's right.
Wrong. Yeah. No. Joe's never wrong. All right, here we go. So let me jump in with my ideas here. Well, not ideas, actually. This is well documented. So my documented history of the Bumble. Leading off, big picture first. Almost every human society on the planet has a legend about some kind of huge, hairy, man-like creature that lives way out in the sticks.
Named Steve.
Yeah.
Listen, it's a beard. It doesn't make me a giant monster
It
from
might,
the woods.
actually.
If it keeps
if you're
going.
hairy all over, but I'm not going to ask you to take your shirt off. Keep it on. But if you're hairy all over, then yeah, you're one of these guys. Anyway, but there are these things live in the sticks. No one ever sees them because, the people that do get killed right away. And they've had their different names. Like the American Indians had the Sasquatch, which you guys have heard of, and the Himalayans had the Yeti.
Right.
White people had the Wookiees from Star Wars. True. Yeah, and as you know, the Wookiees were eventually civilized and allowed to have guns.
Some of them.
Yeah, and of course, as you know, the Wookiees had nothing to do with the Sasquatch or the Yeti.
No interbreeding there.
No, not at all. They're not based on that. The Wookiee legend is actually based on the Cookie Monster from Sesame Street. But where does the Cookie Monster legend come from? Doesn't come from the Yeti, believe it or not. It comes from something else. I know, it doesn't. So, okay, we're going to go back. We're going to take this all apart so you can all understand how it works. But even though everybody seems to think they are the same thing, there's actually no relationship between the Abominable Snowman and the Yeti. Which I know everybody thinks they're the same thing, but actually, if you don't believe me, go to Nepal, ask anyone on the street if they've heard of the Abominable Snowman, and you will not hear a single yes. They have not heard of this guy. All right?
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Where did the Abominable Snowman legend come from? This may be hard to accept, but somebody made it up. I can hear your heads exploding, but stay with me for a minute. We're going to unravel this. It all goes back to 1963, the year before Rudolph came out. And it was a bad year. All kinds of bad things happened. The Studebaker Car Company went out of business. The USS Thresher, a nuclear submarine, was lost at sea with all hands, and nobody still knows why exactly, for sure. The Pope died. Johnny Depp was born. Zip codes were introduced. And we're still dealing with that, right?
We are. God.
Yeah. And most famously of all, 1963 is known as the year that the lava lamp was invented. Yeah. So,
The lava
The
lamp?
lava lamp.
The lava lamp. Yeah.
I didn't know you were from the Northeast
I
portion of
didn't
this
either.
country.
Yeah.
Learn
Well,
something new.
Connecticut, huh?
Yeah, I was actually kind of surprised because in researching the story, I did a survey of momentous things that happened in 1963, and yeah, that was one of them. I had no idea. I thought the lava lamp was like later, but
I cannot with your pronunciation of that word.
I know.
Cannot.
But of course, I live on the West Coast, so maybe it started on the East Coast and sort of spread west.